Welcome, Mr. Russ.
Hello.
We're really excited to have you here at NLCS Jeju. We've read your website and find out that you started making musical instruments when you were 11 years old. Can you briefly tell about why you decided to make musical instruments?
I'm certainly, first of all, thank you for being here. The school is very nice. I didn't expect such a nice school here. I started violin making with 11 years, 13 years actually with violins, but I started with musical instruments, constructing them because very likely, being the smallest child of 5 children, I like to make something where I can produce noise and get attention. And so it's instrument making from drums, guitars, flutes, and then slowly I switched over to violins. And the violin is actually very complicated and interesting, and it's a never-ending story, and this is quite attracting me a lot. Yeah.
So, playing the instruments with great quality would be a common dream of musicians. When you first look at an instrument, how do you know it has a good quality or bad quality?
This is now a nice question, but also a very complicated question, because for the common user it's not so easy to understand how an instrument is made. But for sure, the more time you dedicate looking at it very precisely, the more you will see certain differences, and once you get into it, you can see and re-understand certain areas on the surface of the instrument, how it is made, that you can understand if it's machine made, if it's handmade, or if it's a masterpiece. So it's not easy, and I cannot give you like a recipe how you can see a certain how should I say, a certain standard of what kind of classification every instrument is. It's a general looking. Let's make a small example. I have now 3 lines of my workshop. And I have here, for instance, an instrument which is quite affordable. It's in Germany made in the white with machines. I get it in the white, we retouch it, and then we varnish it with spirit varnish, okay? This is very shiny. I usually make it a little bit faded with the varnish, so it doesn't look too glossy and shiny, but still it has this shiny appearance, okay? So if you have now, keep this in mind, and we have the same thing now. We have a better class of instrument. I call it a linea Macchi, and now this one here is made in my workshop, and the finish is, the varnish is the same varnish. You see it's a little bit less shiny. If you look at the edge, it's a little bit less precise. In one side, it's a copy of a Guarnieri. The varnish is finished in a different way. It's polished, and you can already see that it seems to be a little bit more precious. So it's not that the less shiny it is, the more precious the instrument becomes, but you can see already more handmade and more personal touch on this kind of instrument. This is made by all of us in our workshop. I'm just the one who is directing the work. I touch all the pieces while it is made, and I explain people how they have to do certain parts in order that we have the best quality for that price range. And then at the very end we have like my master violins. And here we have, for instance, let's take here the first one. This is a copy of a Testore, a very particular maker from 17th century from Milan. There is no purfling, it's only signed. There's a brand mark of the antique sign inside. The scroll is here. Here you can see it a little bit. This is typical signs for a Testore. Or the scroll is very particular, and you can see there's a lot of personality in this work. The varnish is a different varnish. It's an oil varnish, which is colored with pigments, just like the old masters. And I think this is comparable with great instruments of the past, of 250, 300 years ago. and this is now a modern instrument. It's new instrument, but very high level.
Thank you. And string instruments have developed over the last 400 years. Along with the development of the instruments, their role have also changed a lot. Can you briefly tell me the developments of string instruments and the change in their role derived by those developments?
Also very nice question. Especially when I started violin making, I always thought we're just making a replay of the old instruments. And the more I go on, the more I see that we're all in the process of how do you call it in English? Evolution of instruments also. I'm just thinking of certain materials we're using for the gut string, for the tailpiece, for the fingerboard, strings with titanium, nylon, silver, and it's like Kevlar. We are using a lot of new materials, which if you're not into it, you don't see it. But we are still in the process of evolution. So what for us some seems like, this is just, I don't like classical music, I don't like violins, this old stuff, always repeating the same thing. Even the music itself has changed a lot. If I think I started violin making 30 years ago, and we all were tuning 440 Hertz, the A string, right? Nowadays, we are 443 actually is pretty common. If I tune it 444 and I go to Austria, I always see that they always tune it a little bit more up. Now you would say just 1, 2 or 3 Hertz higher doesn't really make such a big difference, but it does a big difference. It does a lot of our impression of how we my Englishness, sometimes I have some knockouts. Of our way of how we perception, right? Thank you. That was the right word. How our perception of how we listen to the music and what it gives to us. So it's even in this tiny period of time of 30 years, it has changed a lot. Yeah. So the violin itself certainly made the biggest differences when at the time of Stradivari, when they made just baroque instruments, which means they had a shorter neck, a little bit larger, different strings, no metal, but all gut strings. They had a lower bridge, wider, lower, and inside, something you don't know and you don't see, there's inside, underneath the G string, the lowest string, there's the bass bar, yeah? For us, it takes days to fit a nice bass bar. Yeah, over there we can see it on the table, but it's okay. If I run away now, then we're in big problems. But and the bass bar was 13 centimeters long, and nowadays it's 27. Okay, so these are like differences, a little bit like electric guitar and classical guitar, more or less. We're always talking about a normal traditional violin. Yeah.
Thank you for coming to NLCS Jeju Music Department, and I hope you have a great time in here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. See you next time. Bye-bye.